A lot of the people here that live in the campers, urban campers as they call us, a lot of us got jobs. The prices in Bozeman, or Los Angeles as they call it, everything's expensive here.
Welcome to Montana, a state with gorgeous landscapes, sprawling wilderness, and natural resources that have attracted settlers, prospectors, and vacationers for centuries. But what happens to local residents when the government caters exclusively to those outsiders, tourists, and the ultra-rich? It means that some of the wealthiest people in the country are buying multi-million-dollar vacation homes, and private equity is betting on luxury resorts and high-end development.
Yeah, I guess this is as close as we're gonna get. So the Yellowstone Club is the only private ski resort in the world.
And meanwhile, just miles away in towns like Bozeman, housing is now some of the least affordable in the country. It's harder for a Montanan to buy a home than a Californian or a New Yorker. And people working full-time find themselves living on the street.
They're talking about affordable houses. These places like the apartment over there, and all of them, they're anywhere from $2,500 and up.
The crisis is dividing residents across class lines.
If Bozeman is too expensive to live in, choose another place to live.
And Montana's politicians are making housing central in their campaigns.
As long as we got folks that want to come to this state that have hundreds of millions of dollars in their bank account, that want to make Montana into a playground for the rich, we're going to have a hard time having homes for working class people.
At the same time, a movement of tenants and unhoused people in Bozeman are fighting for the right to housing, even as the governor cuts taxes for the wealthy and blocks the policies that could create real change. We're going to go to 3 towns that represent the past, present, and possible future of the state. Each of those stories will show us how the ultra-wealthy are reshaping the American West. Okay, so we need to do a quick bit of history first to understand Montana's current economy. Let's go back to the late 1800s. An hour west of Bozeman is Butte, Montana, a mining town that once produced a third of the world's copper. Butte was once called the richest hill on earth, and local copper barons vied for control over the mines. At the turn of the century, some of the richest families in America lived in Butte. They were called the Copper Kings: Clark, Daly, Murray, Hines. But workers in those mines started organizing around the principle that a handful of people shouldn't be the only ones who benefited from the massive wealth being generated by this industry. The unions were powerful and militant. Some of the most violent strikes and union battles in history happened in Butte. There were years of unrest, but ultimately the workers won a lot of concessions. And for decades, Montana had some of the lowest income inequality in the country. Unfortunately, this wouldn't last. Most of the mines closed in the 1980s, and later a few reopened without a union. As mining and timber declined, the state made a choice to advertise itself as a destination for skiing and outdoor recreation.
The powder? Well, it's dynamite.
Today, tourism has replaced mining as Montana's biggest industry. Montana is creating a new generation of haves and have-nots, with some of the fastest growing income inequality in the country. And the modern Copper Kings are real estate developers and private equity firms. And the workers that are left out of this modern extraction economy are people like Charles Allen Touchton.
What are you doing, Miss
Go
Tim?
into your eyes.
Yeah?
Yeah,
What did I
just
do?
running that way.
It's probably where,
Looking good on camera, Charlie.
yeah, it's hard to make this mug look good.
Charles Allen has been living out of his RV for almost 3 years. He's one of hundreds of residents of Bozeman that have been priced out of housing.
I am doing brakes on Miss Tina's van because this is how she makes her money. If this van's not operating properly, then she can't DoorDash. She can't, so she can't make no money.
During the pandemic, remote workers flocked to Bozeman, and there was a 36% jump in people who make over $200,000 a year. In that same time period, Governor Gianforte made Montana a tax haven for the wealthy. Since 2021, he's cut taxes for the 1% and slashed corporate taxes. Housing prices have soared. The average single-family home in Bozeman is now over $830,000, and the average rent is up to $2,500. The housing crunch has led a lot of people like Charles Allen to live in their vehicles, and it's overwhelmed the shelter system in the city.
We ain't got but about a month, and all this green grass and all you see is going to be under snow. So at least by October, by Halloween, there'll be 2-3 foot of snow on the ground.
Charles Allen moved to Montana to lay stones at the Yellowstone Club, a resort in Big Sky, Montana. To really understand what's happening in Bozeman, we have to go there.
There's a lot of anger and frustration about the ways that Montana is changing, like among all kinds of people, agricultural people, working class people, all kinds of people.
We met with Joseph Bullington, a writer who's been covering the gentrification of Western towns. He took us to Big Sky, where the average house costs $3.5 million, and some of the richest people in the world are buying second and third, or maybe even fourth or fifth homes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's a resort and tourist town. But really, it's not a place where locals come and just like hang out unless they're here to work, actually.
Cross Harbor Capital Partners is a private equity firm based in Boston that has been funneling money into the region for over 20 years. In 2014, Cross Harbor created a subsidiary called Lone Mountain Land Company, a developer that has built and owns half of the real estate in Big Sky. 11 million.
11.9.
Cross Harbor Capital also owns the Yellowstone Club, built in the 1990s as one of the most exclusive and well-guarded private resorts in the country. The Yellowstone Club was first built by timber baron and ski enthusiast Tim Blixeth, who bought and traded thousands of acres of land from the Forest Service. The club went bankrupt after a series of financial blunders and fraud in 2008.
Real estate developer who founded the high-end Yellowstone resort near Big Sky has been accused of illicitly pocketing hundreds of millions of members' dollars.
And that's when Cross Harbor Capital stepped in to scoop it up for a bargain price of $115 million.
Oh yeah, so here we are. There's the gate. We're not going to be going in there. It looks like they have it closed off, so we might have to turn back around here. I mean, yeah, I guess this is as close as we're going to get. But yeah, you can kind of look up in there a little bit. And there's a golf course out there somewhere. Clubhouse. Membership costs the price of one of their multi-million-dollar homes, plus like some annual dues.
Some of the members include Justin Timberlake and Tom Brady, as well as some very rich people who you've maybe never heard of. Waffle House chairman Joe Rogers Jr., Blackstone CEO Steven Schwartzman's son Teddy, the guy who founded Slack. Recent reporting from Forbes showed membership was up to $78,000 a year and a one-time payment of $500,000. And like Joseph said, the cost of buying or building your own mansion. Yellowstone Club sits at the edge of Big Sky, and to the east are the gates of the Yellowstone National Forest.
I think that the reason that wealth is moving so steadily into this area, to like the greater Yellowstone area, is because, because Yellowstone is known for being one of like the last intact ecosystems on Earth. This kind of growth has its own ecological consequences.
Cross Harbor Capital has expanded Yellowstone Club to 885 members and has made the club into what amounts to a standalone city. Work trucks, vans, and commuters drive up and down the road leading to the club, which employs about 1,700 people during its peak season. 74% of the workers in Big Sky commute, and most of those workers live in Bozeman. Big Sky accounts for 1 in 3 of all jobs in Madison and Gallatin County, but none of those workers can afford to live there. So let's recap. Montana used to be a land of mining barons who had their power checked through the confrontations with a densely unionized workforce. But after the industry shifted to tourism, the private equity firms and developers who took their place largely ran wild, extracting as much of the land as they wanted. This was a bargain that politicians were willing to make in exchange for economic growth. So let's go back for a minute to Butte. Today, Butte is home to 36,000 people, and it's still a place where people can afford their homes. They haven't seen the same steep rise in prices as Bozeman, but Butte is also more economically depressed. Across the country, rural areas that have invested in tourism have seen their economy grow. The Daily Yonder reported that since the pandemic, rural counties that have resorts or national parks gained almost 60,000 new jobs. But towns like Butte that rely on mining and manufacturing are struggling, with more than 80,000 jobs lost since 2019. Bozeman might seem like it's doing better, but it's not clear if the bargain with the tourism industry is creating long-term benefits. Much of this new growth isn't from new jobs for residents. It's from rents and dividends and capital gains. In other words, it's from passive income. Boosters of tourism say this new economic model has a lot of benefits. Today, Butte has to deal with the toxic legacy of the mines. To the east of the city sits the Berkeley Pit, an open mine filled with sulfuric water. It's one of the largest Superfund sites in the country. An economy reliant on tourism has more reason to preserve its forests and rivers and mountains. But as Montana attracts wealthy investors building high-end resorts, more and more of those natural resources are being cut off from the public because Cross Harbor Capital isn't done growing. In 2021, they bought 18,000 acres of land in a highly contested land swap with the Forest Service to build a private resort and golf course. Their new luxury ranch destination is in the stunningly beautiful Crazy Mountains to the east of Big Sky. Membership is by invitation only, and their website advertises fly fishing, snowmobiles, and premier golfing. Right now, we're at an inflection point. Much like the miners stood up against the Copper Kings, a new generation is drawing battle lines in Bozeman. 55% of residents in Bozeman are tenants. Half of them are rent burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on their rent. Everyone in Montana knows that housing prices are an issue, so the governor passed 2 bills that made it easier to build in places like Bozeman. These bills were widely celebrated.
High-density housing, like that behind us here, is part of the solution.
But Gianforte still had to cater to corporate landlords and developers, so he kneecapped laws that would help build affordable housing, including a bill for inclusionary zoning. That bill required developers to include affordable units in any apartment complex they built. He also put a preemption on any kind of rent stabilization in Bozeman. Bozeman has actually been building a lot of new units, but a lot of these new buildings are just too expensive for the people working in the city. In fact, the median price for a newly built single-family home is over $900,000.
We're seeing all of this development for like apartments that are being built, but I'm still seeing people living in campers. It's like, if there's really housing, why is nobody in it? And it's because it's unaffordable.
Oza Echomaker is a member of Bozeman Tenants United, a tenant organization that formed in 2022. She organizes with other tenants and with the unhoused residents of Bozeman, like Charles Allen. Oza lives in Bridger Heights, an affordable housing building not far from the town center. The owners 11 Capital, a developer based in Washington State, are selling the building, and the new owners are raising the rent. Oza says the building has a lot of problems.
We have black mold in every single one of the buildings. I have a neighbor whose window's broken, and it's like, surely in the 5 years since they've bought this place, like, fix one thing a month, and you still make a huge profit.
In just a few years, the Bozeman tenants have won a lot. They helped introduce and pass a cap on the number of short-term rentals in the city, providing more housing for residents. And now they're fighting for 2 national bills: a right for every tenant to have legal representation when they face eviction, and a cap on any rental property that gets federal loans from the FHFA, which would include Bridger Heights.
They're profiting off of the fact that we're too scared to lose our housing.
On top of all that, they helped elect a new mayor who was a tenant organizer himself. And he says housing will be central to his platform.
Montana is an extremely developer-friendly state. Almost all of our land use laws are written by and for the development community. And consequently, this increase in land value, the only people who are happy about it are developers and lenders.
Addressing the rising housing costs is crucial. But what can we do to directly tackle the wealth that is trickling down off the mountain? The billionaires in Big Sky. Well, it's not just the beautiful landscape that's luring them to the state. It's also the governor's generous tax breaks. It didn't start with Gianforte. Montana restructured its tax codes in a major way in 2003, when it lowered taxes for the richest, as well as the tax on capital gains like stocks and real estate. What the Republicans promised would be a boon for the economy only attracted more wealthy transplants. So when it comes to these wealthy part-time residents, there are some simple solutions. The state can raise resort tax and tax on the wealthy, and they can tax short-term rentals like Airbnbs as commercial real estate. And they can raise property taxes on second and third homes while lowering property taxes for residents. Tourism doesn't have to be bad for Montana or for the other western states. But much like the Copper King era, Montana risks becoming an extraction economy where the average person waxes the skis of millionaires instead of enjoying the new wealth that is being generated by their work in the state.
When my parents were raising me, we went on vacation. We had nice clothes. We had everything we needed. What, people supposed to work all month just to pay rent, not have no life?
Like, we're surrounded by public land. We got national forests on both sides. This river right here is public. What is happening with this, as this wave of wealth and this sort of booming of the outdoors industry in the state, is that they're finding ways to squeeze profit out of these things that are technically belong to all of us.
Thanks for watching The Classroom for more Perfect Union. We're doing a series on towns and cities in America that have been reshaped by the ultra-wealthy. If you live in a place like that, comment below, and as always, like and subscribe for more videos like this one.